when I really sat back and counted, I've had maybe 6 or 7 major career or business pivots in my life. So there's been so many different iterations of me. So I'll say a couple of things there. One, I didn't navigate it. I survived it.
Whew.
What it did do was force me to stop playing small and realize that you're doing some really big things and building something that is going to outlive you, that your son is going to be talking about when he's in his 50s, 60s.
But y'all, none of those pivots were because I woke up and made the strategic plan of, in 18 months, I want to be working on this. It came from a pivot of survival. It came from a pivot of, I need a new manager. I need a new company. I want to move to a different place, and therefore I want to do something else. Tanya, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so excited that you are joining the table this season. You have this illustrious career. When I was Googling you and stalking you on the interwebs, I thought, wow, this woman is a Renaissance woman. She, girl, you dabbled. You have dabbled, okay, in all the things.
I call it the lifestyles of the not quite rich and nicheless, because I don't know how to just be one thing to the internet and to the peoples, and more importantly to myself. So a Jill of many trades is what I'm going to be.
So before we get started, where are your people from? Where are you from? Where are you at?
So I am currently calling you from, born and raised in Toronto, Canada. And my people are from the Caribbean, specifically Jamaica, bam, bam, bam. And yeah, those are my identities and how I show up every day.
I tell folks, I've been to Toronto once in the dead of winter, so it was freezing cold. I think my bones got pneumonia. It was freezing. And Toronto's one of the most beautiful cities in the world. I remember I touched down and I was like, I am cold as hell and this weather is inappropriate and I am at peace. So I do want to honor that.
I'm biased, right? There are a ton of amazing, beautiful cities in the world, of course. But what I love, first of all, never come to Toronto in the wintertime. Like, that sounds like a terrible choice.
I was mid-January. It wasn't good decisions. It was mid-January.
Terrible life choices there. Toronto in the summer is just so unmatched. We have, and there's a lot of cosmopolitan cities around the world, but when I say I truly don't need a passport to eat every corner of the globe, in this city, especially in the summer with summer festivals, everyone's just outside. Everyone's just happy. Everyone's in a good mood. People drive better. They actually use their turn signals. Like, everyone is just happier because the sun is shining. We can literally go outside and touch grass, because we know what's coming in November until April. So yeah, it's a fun place for sure.
So because of the Renaissance woman that you are, the Jill of all trades, as you have self-proclaimed, when did you start realizing in your professional advancement that in order to stay employed, in order to stabilize the bag, you needed to learn some tips and tricks on how to pivot, on how to become different things, rebrand yourself in different ways? When did that awakening come to you?
That's a great question. I actually don't know, because when I really sat back and counted, I've had maybe 6 or 7 major career or business pivots in my life. So there's been so many different iterations of me. And, I think like some pivots are by choice. So when I graduated from university, I was working in nonprofit charitable space, and I really enjoyed it. I loved that my job had purpose, but I was getting bored with just the very cyclical nature of working in charitable spaces. And I'm aging myself here, but I printed out my resume. I put them in the mail to a few different event planning companies in Toronto. and I ended up getting hired by an event planning slash catering company. And so that was my first kind of real career pivot, that was in my own hands, and fell in love with event planning. I loved every second of it. I love that the job is never the same, and you can play and be creative, and textiles and sounds and sights and smells and all the other things. And then I got pregnant, and that wasn't necessarily the career pivot. It was a life pivot, obviously, but a few years after, to say the least, right? And every parent listening is just like, understatement of the year. But when he was 2, I started a Facebook group for Black mothers. And I was like, okay, just to connect. I was like most, Gen X, elder millennial moms on Facebook groups, and for parenthood and such. And then in the spring of 2016, it went from 400 to 4,000 in 2 months. And so that's when I was like, oh, this is the thing. And I'm the face of a brand. And, I'm the captain of a ship, and I don't know what I'm doing. And so, that was a huge thing that, again, was kind of foisted upon me just by starting this thing. And, super grateful. But then it turned me into a public speaker and an advocate. And this, people were reaching out to me for DEI things. And I'm like, what? I don't do DEI things. So it's just, there's always been pivots that have happened either to me or for me, or by me. And so I think for me, it's just like, okay, be ready. And we say that, but just like, what skills did I already have that lend this transition to be slightly easier? Starting a nonprofit wasn't hard. I worked in the charitable space, so I knew certain things. I knew about bylaws and board members and all those other things, but I'm also very good at not knowing what I don't know, and, reaching out to people in the spaces that are smarter than me, who have niched down in those particular spaces so that they can guide me accordingly.
It's interesting you bring up mamahood as a pivot, because I'm actively in that pivot right now. I am a relatively new mom, had my first kid, thanks, who I tell people is a Black Wakandian fairy disguised as a little girl. Don't get it twisted. That is her identity. Um, and I want to take a deeper level into that for a second. I never, you don't know what you don't know. And then this baby comes and you literally have to just figure it out. I don't think there's a book or a guru, or a mentor that can really 100% prepare you for this child disrupting your life. And I use the term disruption not as negative, but as fact. It is a disruption. So when you started on that journey, and it also sounds like while working, and then this beautiful baby boy comes out and he's looking at you like, so sis, what we doing? Right? I didn't ask to be here. You tell me what we are doing, right? How did you mentally and emotionally navigate that? Because that's hard.
So I'll say a couple of things there. One, I didn't navigate it. I survived it.
Whew.
When I knew I was going to be going through the pregnancy single, and therefore motherhood single. So I had to, put a lot aside. Pregnancy is not meant to do alone. The birthing classes and the ultrasound appointments and all those other things, you're meant to have someone there with you to care for you. So I had to really compartmentalize a lot in regards to the decision that I made to become a mother. And, just do, and, kind of tackle it the same way I tackled, events, which was, there's a checklist, and, you can plan all you want, but events are living, breathing things, and they can go completely awry, and so are toddlers. So I really just I just really focused. I took the emotion out of it, and it took me a really long time in therapy to really reconcile with that, because, when you watch the movies and TV shows, you give birth and there's this overwhelming joy and it's sunshine and rainbows and you're in love and you're crying, and I didn't have any of that. And I thought I was broken. And then I realized, no, you're not broken. You are just really, um, I was like, okay, I'm a mom now and I got to feed him and I got to raise him and I got to get to work. And it was a job, right? And that's the mentality that I took for it. Um, and so, yeah, I just had to survive. And that's part of why Black Moms Connection was born, so that I can ask questions and get culturally relevant answers. The question specifically was like sunscreen for black skin. I had never thought about sunscreen because I was just like, I'm black. We don't need sunscreen, right? And obviously we know better now. But back then, like, we weren't talking about it for black people. But I was outside at a splash pad with him and I was just like, the sun's really hot. I feel like he should have some protection, but I know if I go put the typical, whatever brand on him, he's gonna look like Casper the Friendly Ghost, and I don't want that either. And so, really just like we talk about it takes a village to raise a child, but it takes a village to raise a mom too. And there's so many people who don't have one um, in real life. And so to be able to create a digital one um, was, part healing for me, obviously, but I had no clue what it was going to become and where it was going to take me. But, you know, um, as I grew into motherhood, I would say a couple of things. One, I was really adamant about making sure I didn't introduce myself as a mother first. I was here first. I'm a whole human being before he came into being. He is the most important thing in my life. Of course, every decision that I make is rooted in this child, but he is not my entire identity because he's his own person and he's going to grow up and be his own person, hopefully a good person, better be a good person. And so I think for me, it's just like really important. That's one way where I push back against this whole like, well, you're a mom now. And I'm just like, yeah, but I'm also a business owner. I'm also a nonprofit founder. I'm also highly ambitious. I'm also romantic. I'm a whole bunch of other things. And I think that that's where the ability to pivot comes in. It's just like I fought to keep other identities outside of motherhood. And if I hadn't done that, I don't know if I'd been able to pivot as well as I did.
There was a lot there. I want to honor a few things, then I'm going to ask you a question. And I'm sure you know this by now that I felt the exact same way when I gave birth. My husband was in the room, so I wasn't alone, but I felt the exact same way. She came out and everybody was like hooping and hollering and people were crying. And I was just like, whoa, what is it? Right. And I remember a nurse being like, are you not happy? And I just remember saying, well, first of all, I'm still on this table. Y'all haven't put my organs back in. So check in 10. Okay. Second of all, is she okay? And I remember when I found out that she was okay, I was like, okay, so you're good. So now I have to wrap my head around this that a whole human just came out of my body and they're going to give her to me after they wipe her off. And then there's this weird expectation that when she came out, Emmanuel also came out and that I'm supposed to know everything. And that's a lot to process. It's a lot to process. So I want to honor that. I see you. I see you, sis. I also want to ask you more about this very interesting idea that because you were fighting for your life to continue these identities that were already pre-built before this bouncy baby came, that also really inspired and I would say influenced the pivots. Tell me more about that because I think a lot of people are fighting for these identities they had pre whatever, pre parenthood, pre buying a home, pre I don't know, pre whatever, and trying to figure out how do I bring those identities with me and or evolve and transform those identities for this new human that I am.
And I think that that's the thing too. Like when you give birth, so much about you changes. Your body, your relationship with your body, your memory, your sleep. Like I am literally not the same human being than I was 12 years ago when I gave birth. Like I just actually, and even before then, like from the time that like my body is given over to this parasite in the beginning, taking all my vitamins. They are taking all of the good things, okay? They're taking your hair follicles out of your hair. They're taking your appetite. They're giving you new allergies. Like they do the absolute most. Beautiful, joyous, miracle of life. It's great. Oh no, disrespectful, disrespectful. With all the love. I say this with all the love, right? So I would say that, I think the thing that made it easier was that I was alone. Yes, I had my mom to support me and I had a small village of people, but because I didn't have to fight and like I didn't have to jostle, right? I know a lot of times, especially in married couples, a lot of times we hear that, oh, the man feels resentful because like all this attention is on the woman when she's pregnant, and then all of a sudden the mom's attention is just on the baby, and she forgets that she's also a wife. So I think for me, I'm just like, because I had less, like at when I was pregnant, I was just an event planner, right? Trying to be out in these streets and figure out what my career was. I loved events and that's all I knew. And that's basically, that was all in my mind. I was a daughter, I was a sister, I was an aunt, but you know what I mean? Like those things like are not necessarily in your day to day or wasn't in my day to day. When he was born, I was a mom. Canada has mat leave, which, very grateful for. So I didn't have to think about anything else for a year other than being his mom.
Canada gives a year of baby leave.
Yeah, so maternity leave, I should not say maternity leave, parental leave, because men can take parental leave, is anywhere from 12 to 18 months. It is generally paid by the government, a portion of your salary. So it's not like it's hard to survive on. Like it's not meant to just be like, I'm going to just be pregnant 24/7. No, you're not. Some companies are nice and they top you up so that you're getting your full salary while you're off. But generally speaking, yeah, the general year is what most moms will take. And then sometimes the husband will take like the latter 6 months. And that way, there's some crossover while she's getting ready for her transition back to workplace. But I will say, like, there's a lot of reasons why Canada will never be the 51st state of America, and a year-long maternity leave, paid maternity leave, is probably number one for a lot of women.
Okay, so let me give you just like some. Okay, in America, I got 5 months fully paid by my employer, and Americans were like, Lexi, you are so privileged.
Yeah, I've heard. I think like what I understood was like, the most is like 6 weeks, and I'm just like, your uterus hasn't even contracted back to regular size at 6 weeks. And so I'm really confused by that. And then I saw something online where someone said, we're not even supposed to take puppies from their moms before 12 weeks, but we expect human moms to go to work. And that was so poignant for me because we know how certain cultures and certain parts of the world revere dogs. We're really treating mothers and puppies better than mothers and children.
Yeah.
That's a whole other podcast episode.
But back to pivoting.
Yes.
I think it's outstanding that you took a pain point of yours, a journey of yours, like, I don't know how to raise this baby, and turned it into this amazing community of other women being like, girl, I don't know either, but this is what I found out from so-and-so down the street, and maybe that'll help you, right? And what it looks like to actually build a community on the foundation of caring for children, which is a community effort, because it does take a village. And so how did that building of that community, and then I would argue meeting and building the relationships with these women, probably some stronger than others, how did that help you get back to Tanya in that pivot?
Oof. I don't know if I've ever gotten back to me. I think because I changed a lot. 1 year ago is different from me today. So much has happened in the past year. It's been insane. So I would say that what it did do was force me to stop playing small and realize that you're doing some really big things and building something that is going to outlive you that your son is going to be talking about when he's in his 50s, 60s, hopefully. The butterfly effect of it, I will never truly know all the stories, right? It's a online global village of almost 50,000 moms. There's chapters across North America. We just opened our first chapter on the African continent in Ghana. We have a chapter in Asia, which was mostly U.S. moms whose partners were stationed um, in Asia. And my brain can't compute that I have a global brand as a result of wanting to know about sunscreen. And it put me on stages, right? I got to do a TEDx talk. It's given me awards. It's potentially, hopefully one day there will be a book, right? And so I'm just like, what it afforded me was, especially in the Black community, we don't have a lot of people who have like political capital and social capital and financial capital and all these different types of capital, right? They always say like, oh, your net worth is when your network or whatever it is, but we are always starting from a behind because our financials and of course like racism and discrimination and all those other things. And so one day I had to really sit back and I was just like, man, like I can't get ahead. Like, I can't secure these brand deals and I'm not growing on Instagram and all these other things. And then I had to realize I'm like, but the things that I've been able to do and the places I've been able to go as a result of just having this idea and letting it blossom and letting it lead me, but also at some point in time leading it places that people would pay a lot of money for. Um, I was just like, okay, Tanya, you're doing okay, and you don't have to be happy with okay, but honor the okayness right now. And I think that that's the part about the pivot too. Is just like before we move to the next stage or the next iteration of you, I'm just like clap for yourself for the things that you were able to accomplish in phase 17, 28, 32 of your life. I think that we are in such a rush as a society to just keep moving. And I get it. Bills have to get paid. My son is turning 13 in September, and I just bought him shoes, and he's a size 13. Okay. So, yeah, I'm just like, we're in such a rush. Everything just feels like it's moving at hyperspeed. But there's something to be said for when pivots are forced upon you. Like, I was unexpectedly laid off in September, and, that wasn't planned. Of course, I didn't see it coming. And, people were just like, okay, what are you looking for? And I'm just like, I'm sad right now. I'm angry right now. I'm scared right now. I have no idea. Don't ask me that question. I'm not job hunting with that energy. I'm not job hunting until I feel like I'm ready to say yes if I get an offer. And then the longer it went, the more imposter syndrome came. I'm just like, I built this whole entire life and it's not as linear as corporations want it to be. They didn't see coordinator to manager and manager to director and director to VP. They want to see very linear things. And I've just done this worldwide web of things that have fulfilled me and paid me and sparked joy, but they weren't getting it. And I was just like, man, I have some work to do on figuring out who I am all over again. Um, Again, not by choice. I was forced into that because of capitalism. So I think just ultimately, to go back to BMC, I'm so grateful when I get to talk to the moms and they tell me their stories, or when they write me cards and tell me about the impact that BMC has had on them and therefore their babies. I'm just like, that's huge. I don't take that for granted at all. I'm so honored. Um, Again, some things just choose you. I started a Facebook group, right? Like, I'm not supposed to be meeting the prime minister. Like, I was ready for that moment when they said, like, all right, can you be available at this time in this place and whatnot? And the answer was yes.
Going back to the professional, all of my professional pivots are not because I strategically made that pivot. It looks like it on my LinkedIn. Don't get it twisted. Branding is powerful. But y'all, none of those pivots were because I woke up and made this strategic plan of in 18 months, I want to be working on this. It came from a pivot of survival. It came from a pivot of I need a new manager. I need a new company. I want to move to a different place and therefore I want to do something else, right? And I always joke people and say, like, my ancestors provide the strategy. I'm literally just a vessel. I don't I don't know what's going on, Tanya. I'm just like, just put me where I need to go.
The fun fact is, no one does.
I don't care what PR move people are saying. Literally, my body knows when it's time to make a new move, but a lot of those moves that I've been making are completely out of survival. And I'm hoping in this new era of my life that I can start pivoting not out of survival, but as a I want to do this and therefore make a plan. So, in your experience, what are the differing tips and tricks of pivot out of survival versus, oh, I woke up and I actively decided for myself, for my spirit, and for me to thrive, that I want to go do X. And then I decided to build a pivot strategy. Are those tips and tricks different?
I would say yes, because sometimes like you need things immediately, right? You're laid off, or you leave a job and there's no employment insurance when you quit, or at least not here in Canada. So you sometimes you it's just like, okay, your pivot for out of survival is take anything that's offered your way. When you have time to plan it out, I think the first thing is always just like, who are you? That's a really important question, and we don't ask ourselves that enough. I think that one of the things that is the saddest about adulthood is, besides taxes and the price of carpets, is that we're not curious anymore. We're not curious about ourselves. We're not curious about the world around us. And it shows on social media, like people read to react. They don't read to comprehend. And so I think the thing for me was like, okay, maybe I need to niche down. Maybe I just go back into events. I have a 20-year career in it. I had a whole business before the pandemic. I can go back into it. It's going to make sense to people. People are like, oh, okay, I knew her as an event planner before. It's two words that people can easily define me as. Like, I totally understand why it would make sense to other people if I went back into events. But I'm turning 46 and my knees are not the same and I like sleep. And so I'm like, do I want to go back into an industry where I'm waking up for, 8 a.m. breakfast meetings and a coffee percolator takes an hour. So I got to be on site for like 6 o'clock. Like, is that something that I want? Do I want evenings and weekends in the summer, which is all weddings and galas and proms? I'm just like, do I want to give up my summer evenings? I think really, really important to know yourself. What type of, if you're an entrepreneur, what type of clients? I think like everyone wants all the revenue and all the money, but not everyone is for you. And the person who's going to penny pinch you and ask you for discounts and whatever, that is not the right client. They're going to end up being the nightmare client that you want to fire and probably should. So I would say number one is figure out who you are, what sparks joy. For me, my non-negotiables are I have to be able to have some sort of play. And I know that sounds very juvenile. And it's just like, 10, you're a grown-ass woman. Like, we're adults, like, grow up. And I'm just like, no. I love being creative. And I don't really care what that looks like. It could be social media, which is a playground. It could be events, which is also a playground. It can look like a whole bunch of different things. It could be, working with the creative departments at a corporation, right? At my last job, I worked obviously really closely with the marketing departments, the creative departments. That was still creative for me because I get to like see and iterate and all those other kinds of things. I'm just like, okay, that means I'm not applying for jobs where that is not even remotely something that I'm going to be able to do. If Tanya's going to end up bored, it's like, that's why the idea of cruises is just not appealing to me. I don't like being trapped anywhere. I want to, when I'm ready to go, I'm ready to go. So I think just, what are the skills, what are your natural passions that you can eventually monetize? And not all of them, right? I love talking. So public speaking is something that I'm hugely passionate about. I love doing, love being put a mic in my hand, telling stories is a superpower of mine. And it's something that I really enjoy doing. Okay. So how do I How do I monetize that? What do I need to do? I need to be on more podcasts. I need to do more lives. I need to pitch more conferences. I need to start small, grow big, as a public speaker. What are your topics? What do you want people to hire you for? So I think like all the pivots are the same, right? Like you still have to know who you are, what your non-negotiables are, what your values are, what are you being driven by? If it's money first, I hate to break it to you, but it's the most fleeting thing. Money's not real, right? Like it is, but it isn't. Like when you say like, oh, so and so is worth $3 billion, like in a real, like what does that really mean, right? Because especially since he doesn't have $3 billion in the bank, he's got properties that are worth whatever, depending on the time of day and the place and the location. Everything is so fluid. So I'm just like, why would you root your values in something that is just so fleeting and fluid and, I don't know, complete utter chaos right now globally? So for me, I'm just like, being creative, being able to be myself, being valued, all those things are more important to me than the title, than the potential salary, my ability to play, right? So even if I did take a job, can I still do my things on the side? Or are they gonna say no? Because if they're gonna say no, then you're not paying me enough. And at some point in time, there's gonna be a push and pull, and I will always have to choose me in the end.
I love this concept of play because I think that very similarly, like you said, that question, who are you? And as you get older, we don't really discuss that. The same thing comes for play. I think that we align and compare play to a 5-year-old. And that's why we have a lot of really sad adults because they believe that they cannot play. And I also agree that capitalism is capitalism, which inherently is not fun. And you actively holding on to your values and your integrity like you have and saying, I'm still going to find play in this, right? These bills have to get paid, but I'm still actively and strategically going to honor and prioritize my play because I deserve it. It's beautiful.
When I was job hunting and looking at different things, there was a job at Mattel, and I was like, OMG, yes, the Mattel. And I was just like, come on, let's go. And then I looked and saw where it was located, and I was like, oh.
Where's it located? LA?
No, it was still in the Greater Toronto area. It was just in the city that is beside Toronto, West. And I'm like, I thought about that, and I was like, okay, let's be realistic. Canada, Toronto is winter 8 months of the year. So from November to April, you are driving in some sort of snow/precipitation. The sun goes down at 4 o'clock for half of the year. I'm like, is that something that you want to subject yourself to? And I'm just like, the answer was no. I'm very, very clear on, my time, especially again, as I've grown into this person, I'm this personal brand and I'm this entity and whatever it is, I'm just like, my time is valuable. And I'm just like, for me to drive 90 minutes both ways every day, even if it was like 3 days a week, I'm just like, is it worth that? And as much as I would have loved to been able to be like, oh my God, my job is Mattel, right? Every time I had to wake up to do that drive, and every time I would come home, that means like, I'm coming home. Even if I leave at 4, I'm probably not getting home until like 5:30 if I'm lucky. And so I'm tired. Am I cooking from scratch? Am I sitting down having a conversation with my son? Are we watching a basketball game? Can I take him to basketball? I'm just like, what do I value more in this moment? I'm just like, he's only little for a short period of time, right? Now he's not little, he's 12. When you're a parent, you pivot to making these decisions for your child, what's best for your child. And sometimes we forget, like, but also what's best for me and the family unit. Me having a long commute would not have been good for us as a family unit. Financially, would it have been good for me and the family? Sure, but that's only one regard. and I think it's really important when we're thinking about career changes and our trajectory or entrepreneurship changes and rebranding and all this stuff is just like, okay, but is that good for the whole or just one part?
And I also think that like the short term and long term of money. Cause even before I became a parent, I would say on stages, I can always make more money. I cannot make more time. So even before becoming a mother, I understood the value of my time. And then this, bougie black fairy from Wakanda came out looking at me like, so what we doing? Right. And that's when I really started to take stock in like, oh, time is not 100% my own anymore. And I've had to currently still in this transition of re-understanding my time, redefining my time, and also every time an opportunity comes into my inbox or on my cell phone, looking at the short term and the long term. Because if the short term hurts my kid, that's a problem. If the long term hurts my kid, that's a bigger problem. And always evaluating that and reevaluating that as I walk through this world now. It's weird. It's a lot.
It is a whole lot. And I think like, as you get older, I don't know how old your your princess is, but I will say that, I'm not gonna say that it gets easier. Parents is like, oh, it's gonna get easier. I'm like, no, it gets different. But what I do love about this phase of parenthood is that we have conversations. I talk to my son about a lot of different things. Um, he asks me very interesting questions. And I love that. I love that we can sit down and, talk about things and he can disagree and it's not going to be World War III. And I can disagree and I can be human with him and say like, hey, listen, I'm one person and especially when I was off, I'm just like, you can't eat all the snacks. That has to last you, a while. I'm like, this kid, just to the point of like when you're doing a good job, but also kind of maybe not a good job. So I'm unemployed. It's been like maybe a couple of months, and this kid's just like, hey, can we go to NBA All-Star Weekend this year? And I'm like, sir, I don't have a job.
On one hand, I'd be the same mama. I'd be like, who paying for it? On the other hand, I love his innocence of just not even like, just like, but wouldn't it be cool?
I am the type of mom who has given him really dope experiences in the past, right? Like I've taken him to LA for March break. We went to things like I used to work for the Raptors and Leafs. So like he's had a ton of amazing experiences. So to him in his mind, he's just like, my mom is dope and makes dope magic happen. So like, of course, this is something that I can ask. And I was just like, okay, but let's rewind. I'm just like, first of all, the flights and then the hotels, which is going to be super expensive because of course it's All-Star time. And so they increase the price. And then you're going to want to go to the actual game. So that's just one ticket. And then you want to eat every day, multiple times a day, and the US exchange rate. And I'm just like, it's not something we can do this year. Maybe, next time, next year, that's something that we can think about and plan for. But right now, sir, while I'm trying to figure out like how to make this severance stretch, I'm gonna go with a no. It's a no to going to San Francisco.
I agree with you. But you know what I think about? I think about that we have this beautiful, respectful, innocent, size 13 shoe, bouncy baby boy who going to the NBA All-Star game is not a crazy dream. And that's what I love about it. Because I think you and I both know people, generational trauma of like kids who would never even dare ask for that. That's like going to the mood. And so, yes, I agree with you, mama. And the fact that he knows this is not a fleeting dream. Well, you said, no, we need to prepare. But the fact that he knows that, I think, is a testament to your mamahood. And not even your mamahood, like your womanhood of you just being you and all these identities and you raising this kid with you who's like, yo, so like, I could go to the NBA All-Star game. Yeah, maybe not today, but like we could actually make this a thing. And how about we talk about what we need to do to make it a thing? And that's very beautiful. That's very powerful, you know?
When you have to pivot how you parent actively learning how to unparent yourself and parent another human being in this social media era, right? Where there's no preparation for any of what we're going through right now as parents of teens and preteens and tiny tots. Um, but I think just in terms of it takes a lot to shake me. I think because I've had such seismic things happen to me and also for me, prepares me to be a better parent, prepares me to be a better entrepreneur who can kind of say, okay, the world is going in a very different direction. There no DEI. Okay, let's go. What else do you talk about? What else, is your brand about? What can you lean on? What are you good at? What could you talk about for free? Whatever, like how they always say, like, what rooms do you want to be in? What stages do you want to be on? Like, all of it goes together. I'm not a parent in a silo and then an entrepreneur and an employee and another. Like they all bleed together. And I think like that's, ultimately you have to look at yourself as a whole human being with a lot of different identities, different passions, different skill sets, some that are worth trying to monetize, others worth keeping sacred for yourself. And again, just being prepared, right? If someone says like, "Hey, you want to hop on a podcast with me?" Be like, "All right, let's do it."
With that said, reintroduce yourself to us. Who are you?
My name is Tanya Hayles. I am a digital strategist and an event consultant by day, and I am a nonprofit founder of Black Moms Connection by night.
Thank you so much. Thank you for existing, and thank you for doing what you do. And I seriously mean that. As a human first, as a woman second, as a Black woman, and as a Black mama. Like, I really appreciate you. I do.